Welcome to Turning Hard Times into Good Times. I'm your host, Jay Taylor. I'm really pleased to have with me for the first time Kevin Bambrough. I've known Kevin over the years, known of him because of his success at Sprott and out of Toronto. But I never met him personally until a couple of weeks ago or so. And that had to do, well, it was about the time when Hydrograph Clean Power's shares started to rise. And about the same time, then I see on X Kevin Bambrough, and he's talking about Hydrograph Clean Power. I thought, wow, this is really great because I've known of Kevin as a very successful investor, and now he's really championing one of my favorite stocks. In fact, it was the largest holding in my own personal portfolio then, but I got to tell you, it's gotten a lot larger since Kevin got involved because it's just the prices exploded from about 16 cents in US money in the middle of I looked at it today, July 15th, it was 16 cents. Well, by gosh, by the end of the month, towards the end of the month, I think it peaked briefly at $1.29. So that's quite a rise in a couple of weeks' time. It's not a fluke, folks. I think you're going to hear from Kevin tell you a little bit more about this and why it's not a fluke and why this is really one of the most interesting, perhaps one of the most transformative companies that I have ever looked at, and perhaps in the history of humankind. That sounds a little bit over the top, perhaps, but just be sure you listen to what Kevin has to say. I guess before I say hello to Kevin, I should probably tell you stock trades in Canada under the symbol HG. You can buy it down here in the States under HGRAF, as I have. 266 million shares outstanding, and if a dollar a share, it's a 266 million. Market cap, as I look at it now, yeah, it's $1.02 or something like that right now in US money. Kevin, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thanks, Jay. It's a great pleasure. I've long read your work, even back in my Sprott days,
Yeah,
covering mining and metals, right?
yeah, the mining sector, and I believe that we're in a bull market of a lifetime for gold and silver and other materials, but nothing has got me more excited right now than Hydrograph Clean Power. Kevin, I should mention, and I failed to do so, as full disclosure, I'm not getting paid anything to do this interview. I don't believe that you are. I own the stock, so that's my bias. I cover it in my newsletter, so that's my bias. And I think if I understand you, you're here to talk about it because you're just so excited about it. You own the shares. You own a great number of shares, I believe, because you believe in it and you want to share that with other people. So thank you so much for joining me. And I just wanted to clear that up, though. You're not getting paid anything. I want people to know that
Yeah,
because
of
when you
course.
come on and you start talking really excited about companies, people say, yeah, oh yeah, Taylor, what are you doing with your own portfolio? Well, I tell my subscribers what I'm doing with my own portfolio, so that's no secret. And I'm not a seller, that's for sure. Unless something unforeseen, I don't see any reason to sell these shares anytime soon. But anyway, let's get going, Kevin. A little bit about your professional background and your investment approach. How do you, how do you invest? I mean, I know you're kind of a speculative investor. I think I've known that about you, but you get in early before other people discover things. It seems that's sort of your trademark, and you've had a lot of 10 baggers over your history while you're at Sprott and elsewhere, I guess.
Well, I guess I should maybe take it from the top, which is sort of why I got into the whole space to begin with. Why did I start investing? And that's how I like to sort of dig in on it because my origin story is unique in that I wasn't formally trained in investing and decided to pursue it myself. Um, I grew up with a family that was into construction. You know, my dad was an engineer, civil engineer, built a business. He was always pushing me to get a commerce degree. I was good at computers. And in university, I remember struggling in computer science class, looking out the window, watching people throwing the football. And I was like, I don't want to spend my life doing this, sitting at a desk doing computer work. And I was really barely going to school and wanted to have a construction business. And then the 1990s, the recession hit, and all of a sudden it was like I couldn't get work anymore. There was just literally no work in the construction industry.
Mhm.
Wages plummeted. And at the same time as that, Microsoft was announcing Windows launch, and there was the opportunity to become a Microsoft engineer. So I took those courses and I started, just saying it's the same thing as construction consulting, but now I'm computer consulting. I'm rolling out, getting companies on the internet, networking computers, running wires, and I worked my way up quickly to consulting for the banks.
Mhm.
BMO Bank of Montreal was one of my last contracts in the late 90s, and that's when I got exposed to the ridiculousness of stocks. And everybody in that area, like we had a whole floor booked out on one of the top floors of the Bank of Montreal Tower, and everybody was trading stocks. All the tech guys that were supposed to be doing tech consulting were all trading stocks during the day, and we were mainly doing our work after hours, so
Uh-huh.
not to disrupt the brokers and the bankers, right?
Uh-huh.
And so, you started to learn, and I sort of say like, oh, this is a game because I didn't believe in a lot of these companies because they were trading with such ridiculous valuations already.
Mhm.
But I started to pick things like I picked up on the fact that B2B stocks were going to be big before they were called B2B stocks. And
Uh-huh.
I remember investing in a company like Commerce One, and I bought it at like $15 a share, sold it at 45, thinking I did great, and then watched it go to 1,000. And that whole bubble period got me wondering like what's going to happen. And I started digging into the history of manias, panics, crashes. I could realize that nobody knew what the hell they were doing in terms of due diligence. The brokers were asking me about, what do you like? What about this software company? So I realized no one really knew what they were doing. Even
Mhm.
what would seemingly be the most brightest, most sophisticated minds in the stock markets had no clue what they were recommending to clients.
Uh-huh.
And started reading Jim Rogers, who I interviewed the other day, the great pleasure,
Yes.
and Mark Faber, who I eventually met and got to join the board of Sprott when I was there.
Uh-huh.
And so in this late 90s, I started digging into all this, macro research, the history of money, manias, bubbles, and crashes, reminiscence of a stock operator, all these classic books, as well as, the Peter Lynch, the Warren Buffetts, studying all this stuff. And then I basically decided that I wanted to try to pursue this. And I was really inspired by the Market Wizard book series that were just getting started then. And there was a lot of stories of, people sort of struggling at the get-go, making some money and trying to trade and blowing up. And so I was very cautious off the start of my process. So I studied technical analysis, and I decided I wanted to continue to, use my deep research and try to find things that were going to be popular. Almost like I often tell people, it's like finding a song on the radio, but that you
Mhm.
think's going to, it's going to check all the boxes, and you might not like the song, but you're like, oh, this song is going to be popular with this demographic because it sounds a lot like that song that
Uh-huh.
was just popular. And
Mhm.
when you sort of do that in your full suite of stock analysis, and you look at things like competitive, does the company have patents? Is it scalable? Is it going to be a huge market potential? Is it has the stock bottomed out? Is it well funded? Is it capex payback, all these different things, you start realizing, okay, if I can find things like this
Uh-huh.
that before other people do, especially before the brokers do, because they're mainly interested in fees. And so they don't bother with the small cap stuff until it gets bigger.
Right.
And they might buy in their PA, but they don't get in. And so I sort of have been a specialist of trying to find things before other people, do my due diligence, and then basically, when I was at Sprott, I used to do private placements for Sprott all the time in companies. And then I would take them to the brokerage community and say, guys, I've done my due diligence. We've just bought 10 or 20% of this company. You should take a look at it. They're going to need money in the next couple of years. You should cover it. You should. And they'd be like, thanks, and then they'd get involved with the company, and, they would eventually do research,
Mhm.
provide coverage. The stock would go up.
Yeah.
Permits would be had if it was in the mining sector. CapEx is needed. They would help fund it. And it was a good working relationship.
Right.
So that was sort of my early days there.
All right. So your early days, and I'm just thinking in terms of Hydrograph Clean Power, you are a significant investor in the company. You started doing it, I think, not that long ago, you started buying. So you must have seen something at Hydrograph. So I have to ask you, Hydrograph must have ticked those, you must have been able to tick those boxes you were mentioning in many ways with Hydrograph. That got you interested in this stock. So maybe you could just tell us what really fired you up about Hydrograph, because you are obviously on fire for this company. You believe in
Yeah,
it
I'm,
with your heart and soul. That is quite
yeah, I'm, that's like, it's an understatement to say I'm on fire. I could say honestly, I've never been so excited about a company in my life, you know, and, some people have even said, I've been getting accused of being like too promotional and and I just say, something. I said to my son today actually, because he was talking about, is this letter that he was writing about the company? He goes, does this sound too promotional, Dad? And I said, never apologize for being honest and
Yeah,
about being truthful about what you see and
yeah,
let people judge us down the road,
yeah.
you know,
Based
whether
on
we're
the
right or wrong,
performance.
right?
Yeah,
But I'm being honest
yeah,
and I'm not going to
exactly.
temper it. I'm not
Exactly.
going to
And I mean,
temper it.
and again, that's why I wanted to make sure that people understood that neither you or I are being paid to talk about this. We're both excited about it. I'm 10% as excited as you probably. If I were more, I would probably they'd take me off to the funny farm. But
Yeah,
anyway,
well, I bought a lot of
honesty,
stock, right?
honesty is absolutely what we want. And I know, having learned to know you, that you are speaking from your heart and soul. This is not any BS. You believe in this story and you believe in it, not because of the tooth fairy, but because you've done your due diligence. You've even interviewed recently Dr. Sorenson, the inventor, uh,
Well,
umpteen
I've
patents.
been emailing with him on a regular basis lately, as well as Kirsten. Just as I find things, as I think of things, I'm trying to send them, my thoughts, share ideas.
Mhm.
Even this morning, I wrote an article about textiles. I woke up in the middle of the night, early morning around 4:30, and I started thinking about how to use graphene in textiles, and I started digging in and doing some research, and I've been loving these AI tools like Google Gemini, especially. I've been using just in the
Mhm.
last couple of weeks, and the deep research that I can do. It's impressing even Dr. Sorensen when I send him a full report where I say, how would you actually use Hydrograph's graphene variants to try to enhance linens and cottons?
Uh-huh.
And it specs it out. It's amazing what it
Wow,
tells
what you
you.
can do with
Like,
AI already. Yeah.
oh,
Yeah.
it literally tells you exactly like, you could, you make this mixture and then you put it together, and then you
Yeah.
you soak it and then you should dry it and then you got to put it at this temperature so it'll bond well
Hmm.
and then it tells you all the different properties that it will have and it's just incredible.
Yeah, well, Kevin, I'd like to say that you are very active on X. And if people want to take advantage of this work you're doing, you share a lot of that with people on X, right? I mean, I
Yeah,
saw some things this morning. I didn't have time to read it, what you did today on X, but every day you're active on X, living and breathing this story of Hydrograph Clean Power.
well, I'm digging in deep because I want to help the company. I see a great opportunity for accelerated growth and for improvements on the business plan. Um, And so I'm offering
Hmm.
advice, and I've actually had discussions. I've mentioned it a couple times that I'm actually thinking about maybe getting involved in a more formal way with the company.
Hmm.
It's something that I'm debating because I've been retired for 11 years, but I just feel like it's so important, which we'll get to after we cover some stuff. It's so important that I feel like I should do a little bit more for a period of time. I'm not really sure
Hmm.
exactly what that role will be, but I'm still thinking about it, and I think I'm gonna, at the very least, I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing, which is, digging in and trying to help where I can and connect them with some important people in the world that can make this company fly.
Well, I think you see the potential for this company to do good for humanity overall in many different ways. Maybe we can get to that. I don't know, but if we'll have time or not. But what do you see then
Well,
in
let's
terms?
let's let let's cover that. I just want to touch on how you mentioned earlier. I didn't really answer your question about how what got me excited and got me
Yes.
interested.
Okay.
So you mentioned you read my book. Here's my book, The Energetic Investor. So I finished that one and I just published it. And I hired my son this summer to work with me on energetic media to, doing podcasts. And I wanted to, dig for stocks. And I also was working on book two, which was going to be more of a deep dive into resources
Oh,
and
good.
resource investing, right? I wanted, because I know a lot of people this is a mind body finance, sort of a how
Yeah.
to train the self to
Hmm.
be to dig and to not to remove your biases and believe you can and dig and, I call the human body like a biological supercomputer, and you have to train it to
Yeah.
be able to take in the data and process it, and then make decisions. And so, in starting to work with my son, he the theme of this next book was father, teaching his son how to invest in resources,
Hmm.
and we were going to go through some case studies. And I thought, well, we might as well take on a new sector because it's been a while since I've done that. And
Uh-huh.
there's always a hesitancy to do it when you already know a bunch of sectors well and
Yes.
you're able to make money. And I'm like, I got, all these things that I think
Yeah.
are going to do well. I love silver and molybdenum and gold and
Yes.
copper. And I've got all these different investments. And so, I'd had, even myself, I'd been delaying looking into graphene because I'd looked
Ah,
at it years ago, like everyone else, and it hadn't worked out. I didn't
right.
buy it, but it just seemed like it wasn't ready, and I'd been waiting. And my son worked at Power One. I introduced him to Pat DeCapo a couple years ago. So he did 2 summers with Pat, and both summers he worked on the hydrograph file and kept telling me, Dad, this is a really cool company. You got to look at it. And I just was busy, I got all these silver stocks are going to 10
Sure.
bag and
Yeah, I know.
and so I put him off. And then
Uh-huh.
now that we were working together, I said, okay, let's dig in. And I said,
Hmm.
and I'm going to show you. And it was funny. I was like, I'm going to show you that probably what we're going to find is that most of the companies will be sort of well covered and overvalued in this sector now. And then the little ones will just be a bunch of, classic little companies that are going to burn cash and probably have, will never amount to anything.
Is that what you were telling your son?
Yeah, that's
Or
what I was
suggest,
telling my
yeah,
son.
it's probably going to be a waste of time, but let's take a
Yeah.
look. Huh?
Yeah, but I'm like, we should still do it
Yeah,
because I said I would do it if I was you, young,
yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
And I don't need to anymore, but I'll do
Yeah,
it. And
yeah.
then, so we started digging in, and I'm sort of explaining, first thing you got to do is you get your arms around a sector. You're like, where's the levers? What drives profitability? What drives, and in the case of hydrograph, I was really pleased that right away there was the ISO 9001 standard.
Right.
And
Mhm.
that was a big deal because I didn't even know that had just come about in the last couple of years that there was a governing body that was actually verifying the quality.
Mhm.
And so then then right away you're like, okay, well they've got this high purity 99.8% carbon. And as a gold guy, a silver guy, I'm like, oh, well, how come it's not 999 fine? Can't they do 4 nines, 5 nines? And who can? And, what's the competitors? I'm trying to get the landscape down. And then I started realizing, well, wait a second, that point two is not an impurity,
Mhm.
really. It's oxygen and it's
Yeah,
an enhancement. It makes
yeah,
it better.
yeah.
So I started telling people we should actually call this 100% carbon with a 0.2% oxygen enhancement, right? And so you got to get that out of your head because it's like a red herring, It makes you think like, whoa, it's not 100% pure,
Yeah.
and then you start looking more at the standard, and you're like, well, wait a second, what else is there that's important here? And you're like, oh, less than 50 nanometers. And that particle size, if you read a bunch of literature, which I dug into about health and safety with graphene, they say that very small, tiny particle sizes makes it kind of safe in the human body. You're not going to have like larger flakes, sharp
Hmm.
edges. They get into cells, they start cutting things up and whatever. Whereas tiny particle sizes, obviously, you don't want to eat a handful of graphene, just like you don't want to eat a handful of copper. But
Right.
small particle sizes, very, very small, minute particle sizes are deemed to be safe. And Hydrograph's actually got working on getting FDA approval for food grade plastics, which is a massive market that we can talk about. And then also on the ISO standard, they have a property known as 100% sp2 bonding,
Hmm.
and it's also referred to as being crystalline. And this means that the little particles that they create through their process is they're open and ready for business basically to interact, and this makes it absolutely pure graphene. And when you dig in and you look at everybody else, they typically either don't say or they're trying to hide why they can't make 100% sp2 bonding. And
Hmm.
this is so key because when you go to I don't know if we should maybe touch on it now, but maybe I guess we should because my mind goes there, and I think people are going to wonder like, what the hell is graphene, and why is it important, and how does it work? And in it's funny, in conjunction with me writing this book, I did a deep dive into biology right down to the atomic level.
Yes, you did.
And when you go down to atoms and electrons, um, there's there's a rudimentary intelligence, right, in our cells, in our biology that makes us have this higher level of consciousness and understanding in our subconscious, and we have all these neurons talking to each other. But at the very root of it all is energy and our energy systems. And that literally means that, like, when our electrons in our atoms, in our molecules have a charge, we can think. When we're low on energy, less potential to bond, just like chemistry, less potential to interact. So you actually, it's at the atomic level that makes us think and work. And interestingly, when you go down to that atomic level, you find that there's a rudimentary intelligence to atoms and electrons.
That's incredible.
And when you look at we're like one example of what is this rudimentary intelligence. Well, one example would be that when you take carbon atoms and you organize them, so you take them in the state, this sp2 bonding, this 100% crystalline, and you mix it into a polymer. We don't know why it does it. Okay, I want to be very clear. We don't know why. Just like we don't know gravity. Like, why is there matter? Why is there time? Why is there gravity? It just is, right? And so you have to kind of just accept it. And that's one of the things. Don't think of it as like some complicated thing that, only, PhDs can understand, because they don't understand it.
Yeah,
just
exactly.
just like they say about quantum mechanics and quantum physics.
Yeah, they don't know.
They say that if you understand quantum mechanics and quantum entanglement, it means that you don't understand it. Right? And so this rudimentary intelligence means that when you mix it in with a polymer or anything, these atoms lock together in a certain pattern and they reach out to each other, and then they form these lattices, this lattice arrangement, which is, which you could, well, you could look at my website or my articles and other things about graphene and how it looks in a lattice form, but it's basically like a chain link fence. Okay.
Yeah.
Just to think of it as a chain link fence. And so if you wanted to build a chain link fence, you'd want it to be very pure, because it's going to make the carbon atoms will build the fence for you. You don't have to build it. You just have to stir it up and it spits out the fence. But if it's not pure, if you have impurities, you're going to get holes in your fence. Right? Then it's not going to do its job. It's not going to keep things out or keep things in. Or in the case of graphene, with electricity moving through the lattice, if you're doing batteries, you're doing coatings that are going to need to have an electrical pulse through it or something. If you have holes in the fence in a battery, it means that the power is going to basically be concentrated as it tries to move through around the hole. So it'll be concentrated in some areas. There'll be resistance in the area where there's impurities, and that could lead to heating up, burning up, blowing up, right?
Yeah. And these
lithium
are some
battery explosions and whatever. So
these are some of the problems. These are some of the problems then that those, if you don't have that sp2 bonding, right?
Yeah. So if you don't have if your product's not 100% pure sp2 bonding, then the big boys aren't going to use it. They're not going to put it in carbon fiber on, military equipment. They're not going to use it for bulletproof vests. They're going to be afraid of defects. You think back to, you remember well, like the Firestone tire debacle with them blowing up. Like, you're going to put this stuff in tires. Are you going to gamble with inferior products with impurities that there may be a clump batch to batch, and you end up with how many tires do you want to risk?
So it's important then to note that sp2 bonding is Hydrograph is the only one that is able to do that.
I've seen in this type of a bulk process that could produce that scale. I mean, there's other companies, there's different types of graphene, right? There's people trying to do 2D. And again, that's a red herring. Don't look at just the 2D. That's single atom, single layer, very expensive graphene that's going to be grown on surfaces like on a copper plate. And that's going to be used for electronics. And that's amazing, because it's going to reduce the power needed in like AI chips by 1/1000th. And if they achieve that, it'll destroy the bull case for AI power consumption data centers. It's something that needs to be watched, because it's
okay. So what you're saying is mass production of this sp2 bonded product is what sets Hydrograph apart then.
Yeah. For its particular applications, which is we'll get into, but I mean they're massive and plentiful, all the different applications, and it's things like everything from textiles that I mentioned to concrete to polymers to enhancing metals coatings, lubricants. The beauty is too is because it's so potent and pure, you use like 1/10 to 1/100th of the compared to the competitors,
Uh-huh.
and that's why they're going to be able to hold the margin and keep these prices high, so they can have these very high margins. And that was another very key point. And then another box to check, or another key point that got me excited, was that it was patented, and it was
Mm-hmm.
patented in, they got the first patent in 2016, but they've built a moat of patents
Mm-hmm.
because they're the only ones that have been playing with this high quality graphene for the last
Sure.
10 years.
Exactly.
And so they've got patents on the Hyperion, on the ignition systems. They've layered on patent after patent just in the last couple of years on how best to produce this graphene, and how to start using it in 3D printing, in coatings, in specialty products. They've got many patents filed, many patents pending. And from what I hear, they won't say what, but they say a lot of exciting things are coming down the pipe.
Mm-hmm.
And I can only imagine, I mean, they even say they can't even imagine yet all the things that you're going to find that you can put graphene in and make it, better, stronger, faster.
Well, exactly. And I would just suggest to my viewers that your interview with Kirsten was excellent. That's when I first, you addressed that issue of patents, I think,
And
and she helped you very well. And it's my understanding, Kevin, that they can really engineer these products to almost any design or need that companies have. And they will probably be doing patents for specific applications with probably massive, large scale applications. And these are usually 20-year patents. So I think they got something like 11 years left on the initial patent for the Hyperion technique, perhaps. But they'll be, as Kristen told you, they are adding, Dr. Sorenson is adding patents all the time for new
but but
applications and so forth.
but it's important too. That original patent is for the base variant, the FGA1. So
Yes.
they've got another patent, I think it was like 2020 or 2022.
Okay.
They've got
So
another one pending. So they call it the reactive, or the next
uh-huh.
layer up, the one that's for 350,000.
Right.
That's a newer patent.
So
And
they're
then,
keeping ahead of the
yeah,
competition.
they've
They're
figured out
first
how to
movers.
enhance. They figured out how to enhance their graphene and make
Uh-huh.
new variants to make it even more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
And this second higher level variant, from what I can determine using AI and looking at its applications, it's going to be one of the huge ones that goes into like the 3D printed concrete, 3D printed plastics, maybe 3D printed metals.
Incredible.
Um, just huge coatings. Like it's a big upgrade that they've done here to make the product great. Now, I don't think that they might not make that much more per ton,
Mm-hmm.
but they have it locked down because there's added costs to upgrading it, and I imagine they're either trying to keep the margin the same, or at least make
Yeah.
the same total margin. And I haven't got that information yet, but it's
I mean,
still.
how much better do you need to get than 70 or 80% operating margins? And then I don't know, Kevin, at some point, if you want to, are you finished addressing this? How did you get excited? I don't
No,
think we're
I'm sort of running down some of the points here,
okay.
just to finish off the main
Sure.
picture, right?
Yeah, sure.
And so, yeah, you've got this patented process and more patents coming, and then you've got the fact that when you look at the process being a one-step process from acetylene, which is a total of two-step process, like from natural gas. There's natural
Mhm.
gas to acetylene,
Right.
which can be done very efficiently nowadays. I was researching today and yesterday. I did a massive report using Google Gemini, and I looked at all the NATO countries, and I looked at who are the biggest acetylene producers, who are the big companies, whether it's Germany is apparently the most advanced with base F,
Hmm.
is the biggest acetylene producer with the most efficient process in the world. So I'm looking at that and saying, okay, well, who's going to be next after Texas, right? And why aren't we engaging with all these people today if we can? And I realize they're short staffed. So I'm already starting to try to make connections there through networks of people I know. I've got connections into things like IRMA, the European Union's materials alliance to get strategic materials. There's all these different incentives in some of these countries like Germany. You could actually get money for producing hydrogen. Anyway, I digress. Back to the process.
Right.
The process being this one step pure, simple, scalable process was another huge plus for me because
Hmm.
it's not this, you know, pilot project, small scale thing.
Right.
They can, it's basically the current unit they have now, 4 cylinders, 70 liters each. With the same controller, you go to 10 cylinders, exactly the same. And then you're doing 25 tons.
Hmm.
And it's just, you could picture these cylinders like being in a car, car cylinders, fill, spark,
Boom,
the
boom.
separation between hydrogen and the carbon happens because acetylene is C2H2, right? The
Yeah.
carbon spits out as the temperature spikes to 2400 degrees. It immediately crystallizes in a rapid cooling process, and you end up having saleable hydrogen,
Hmm.
this beautiful, pristine, perfect, absolutely unbeatable nanocarbon material, which they call graphene, and you're going to have a bit of heat waste, and that
Yes.
heat is going to be captured over time. There's lots of ways. I've been talking with Dr. Sorenson and
Hmm.
Kirsten and using AI, and when you look at the latest heat exchangers, you might actually be able to add heat exchangers to these units, reduce the cooling time by 20%, and therefore increase the cycle time. And you're going to generate electricity in that process that you could maybe sell back to the acetylene plant that uses a bit of electricity when they're converting natural gas to acetylene. So
Interesting. So there's so
it's
many
good.
things. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't even really matter other than the fact I want it to be very clear
Mm.
that, Dr. Sorensen says in the process, the acetylene, it brings its own energy. They don't need energy. All
Yes.
they need is a spark.
Right.
But I want to even just say clearly, they don't need the energy that's released.
Right.
They only want the soot,
Yeah.
right? It's like you want the waste. So
Right.
the hydrogen is saleable. So I think my estimate was about 76% of the energy in the acetylene continues on as a saleable hydrogen product, which
Wow.
Germany, if it was a plant in Germany, there's grants to say, we want you to kick up hydrogen production. We will
Wow.
pay you to develop a
I
factory
got
to
it.
produce hydrogen.
Ah,
So that along, like there's so many different places you can get money from. In Alberta, I was looking, there's all these different grants for materials.
government.
A hydrogen economy is coming in part. And so the combination of graphene, hydrogen, and then the byproduct, this so it's not a byproduct, but the production of electricity will
Hmm.
be utilized in different places. Obviously in Alberta,
Yep.
cold winters, who knows what you want to use the heat for? Maybe you're using it to help heat the town's water,
Uh-huh.
like
Uh-huh.
there's a lot
Hmm.
of things that you could do.
Right.
But either way, generating electricity is an easy one. And so you've got that low energy net
Hmm.
zero because you're
Yeah.
capturing, right? There's no emissions. You can
Oh,
capture everything. So you've got net zero. Can't beat it. It's already net
exactly.
zero. And then you're like, well, low energy, it's basically no energy, right?
Right.
Like it's so when you actually get to the late, like the newer versions that will come when you produce Hyperion units with graphene, it will be as close to no energy wasted at all in this process that I just go, it's they've already got the purest product. They're going to have no emissions and almost no energy. Good luck with any of these other. And I don't want to, actually I do, because people are going to come at me. I know it. They've already started going, oh, look at this company. Look at this company. We produce it better. And they got to,
Uh-huh.
you know,
Yeah. Well.
it's garbage. Okay. It's garbage. I say it's garbage. I looked at them all. I could have bought them all. I'm independent. I'm talking my book, but I did my due diligence. And
Hmm.
these other companies don't talk about their product. Right.
Right.
And Kirsten and Dr. Sorensen, Dr. Sorensen seems a bit more, likes to be a little bit more cheeky, but uh, I can see how, the people don't want to sling mud and all that. I'm just going to say I did my due diligence and it is far and away the best process. The idea of mining graphene and then trying to slice it up and burn it and crush it, whether it's a dry or wet process. I mean, you're just tons
Yeah.
and tons of energy in there and it's just not even close. So that whole combination to me
Hmm.
just says, here's this amazing sector.
Hmm.
It's going to change the world. It's
Hmm.
super important for
Yeah.
everybody. This product is going in everything. This graphene has to go in everything. And if you don't get it in your product, you're going to go extinct. It's
Hmm.
evolve or die. And
Hmm.
so you've got this event, global event, and I equate it to the oil discovery of oil and petrochemicals. And they now have a patent is the best way to extract petrochemicals from oil and therefore lead to all these wonderful plastics and everything, except it's better. It's bigger and better than that
Huh.
because it's not just in polymers, it's going to go into pulp and paper, it's going to go into cotton and linens, it's going to go into metals, it's literally going into everything. and they've got the patents for the process to make it, and they've got the patents that can't be beat because it's no energy, no emissions, 100% pure. How are you going to beat this from a scientific standpoint? You can't beat it. You
Right.
know, it's not like you're going to create energy from this process. They
Right.
already don't use any. You
Right.
can't like say it's going to like, you're not going to absorb emissions from the environment, and it's at net zero is the best you're getting.
Right.
So in my mind, it's like you can't touch it.
Well, I guess, Kevin, you've said on an interview that that this is far more than a 10 bagger. It's a 100 bagger, maybe more than that. And so as I'm listening to you talk about all these applications, potential applications, it's going to have to go on almost every materials industry there is. Margins, they're pretty much alone. They are alone in terms of their ability to produce this product. And they're the first movers, so they will have an edge against anybody else that comes along and tries to catch up, I believe. So how big is big? How high is high? What sort of, I mean, it's sort of mind-boggling in terms of what the economic potential is for this. I mean, we've gone over the economics on several interviews in the past with Carrie Landis, with Kirsten, and so forth. So I think most of our people know the economics. The operating margins are something like between 70 and 80%. The CapEx is what's remarkable to me. Kevin, you and I both being in the mining industry as we have been, know the enormous amount of CapEx that's required to build a mine, and not to mention the amount of wasted energy, the amount of energy that you expend to build that mine and to do all the things you have to do.
And
So,
then the environmental risk with huge tailings ponds.
yeah, and that happens every now and then, in spite of the best efforts to keep it from happening. And of course, issues of danger and all that has been addressed by the company to a great extent, but well, to as much as possible. And they will soon be building a plant in Texas. I don't know how soon. I hope we get an announcement sometime soon about a natural gas company that they will be hooking up with and having the acetylene piped right into the plant. And as you've pointed out, and as Kirsten's talked about, you can scale this thing up. The 25 tons per day, 25 tons per unit, right? And the cost is, $500,000 maybe for one of these. And if you look at the price that they're expected to get, a minimum of 250,000 per ton times 25 tons, and then endless numbers of these Hyperion units. So you can scale up to almost any size, right? You could as much as needed. But the question I have, Kevin, is how can they do this? Because in listening to Kirsten, they're expecting some pretty big orders pretty soon. I don't know exactly how soon. So there's going to be a scaling up project need here that's going to come if it unfolds as Kirsten is suggesting. How are they going to get the capital to do that? How are they going to keep other companies from coming in and saying, "Hey, we've got the money," and and try to scoop up this little company, baby company, really, compared to the big giants that are out there now? How do you see this? Shareholder dilution is something we in the mining industry are so used to. We get destroyed all the time with shareholder dilution if we're long-term investors. So what are your thoughts about that? In terms of
Okay,
dilution, in terms of predators.
sure. Well, let's start with, you touched on the profitability ramp up and scale. And so, I think just as we lead into that, we should just say they've publicly said many times they're with 65 to 70 companies, right?
Yeah,
And so we have to remember this, and you mentioned the 18 months. 18 months lead time is what they say is typical for a company to do what? To get before they even got into bed with Hydrograph, they were
yeah.
at the geek, right? And they sampled material,
Hmm.
right? They sampled the material. This is what everyone needs to understand, because everyone's like, oh, you got to wait for the contracts. And I'm like, no, you don't. They've already won, right? They won at the geek
Yeah,
because these companies that signed on with Hydrograph sampled different materials and said, this is the material we think is best for us.
right.
Let's work with them. And then they signed agreements. They got in bed, NDAs. They agreed to pay Hydrograph staff to co-develop products with them. And it's an 18 months process. So it's like, I don't know any particular products off the top of my head that I'm going to mention, but you could just imagine if you're trying to make a new plastic that's bulletproof or a tire
Hmm.
or whatever, you're gonna the company would say, okay, what do you think we should start with? Let's put in 0.5%, 1%, 1.5%, 0.75%, whatever. And then they would produce a couple of tires. They'd put them through their testing.
Right.
They'd say, oh, this seems to work better. You know, if it's a piece of plastic, they're like, okay, let's expose it to UV rays and imagine it's aged 20 years and
Right.
let's put it through stress tests and vibrate it and whatever and figure out if it breaks. And then they'll get the recipe.
So
And
Kevin,
then,
let me just stop you there. So that's where
sure.
a lot of these 60 or 70 companies are in the process. They've been testing the material,
Yeah.
and now they need to test it and make sure it's going to be good for commercial,
Yep.
commercially, and then they're going to do a contract of some size with
Yeah,
Hydro.
they're right now. The way I see it is they're in the process of optimizing their product in co-development where they're paying for the samples. They're already paying for the graphene,
Uh-huh.
so there's revenue. They're paying for Sorenson's team to work with them to help them innovate.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, you have to ask yourself as a business person, would you not expect to, if you're going to enter into this venture, you expect you're going to be successful. They expect they're going to be successful. I expect they're going to be successful. And so I look at it like it's, if they're going to, because it's a pure perfect graphene, if they're going to go ahead with someone, they're going to go ahead with the people they've been working on this with for close to 18 months. Right.
Right.
And obviously some companies have started later than others. And you can
Right.
see from the past interviews, she talked about, 50 companies at the start of the year. And now it's 65, 70. She said there'll
Yeah.
be 70. Last time she said maybe 70 they might be there today.
Right.
So when you look at those companies now, you start coming up with some numbers, even just for them. And she said, 6 or 7 of them, 1,000 to a couple thousand. So
Mm-hmm.
you could put in a number, maybe 6,000 to 10,000 tons there, just to be conservative. I would say 10,000. And then you'd say, she said the rest would be an average of around 100 tons a year. So that's like 6,000, say 6,000 tons. So now you're up to like, anywhere from 10,000, 12,000 tons to, you know, arguably 15, 18,000 tons. Even at 5,000 tons, the numbers get ridiculous. At 1,000 tons with a 200,000 a ton margin, that's $200 million of profit.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Of
and
operating.
I start, and so like, and then you go 5,000 tons. Wow. It's like, okay, now you're talking $1 billion, and $1 billion of profit. And what growth? Like when you look at the market size, not just in the USA, but globally, like all NATO countries say, if that's the first goal is to ramp up in NATO countries between the military, and this doesn't account the talks with
Military.
the DoD,
No.
which could be bigger than the whole thing, just the
Right.
military.
Right.
And in my mind, I'll touch on that. All the NATO military organizations, all these government organizations and defense contractors, they all of them, every single one of them is going to be ordering this product. They need it. They must not delay. There's a global arms race starting to upgrade all military equipment to make it enhanced with graphene and to have to maintain a competitive edge if you have it or not lose it, right? Or gain it if you don't have it ahead of it yet or whatever.
Right.
Anyway, the numbers get mind-boggling, and so then you start thinking about, let's touch on the capex you mentioned. So
Mm-hmm.
at $500,000 for these units, for a 25-ton unit, 10-year life, you got, it's a joke. It's like they depreciate like a typical luxury car per year. It's nothing, Meanwhile, a 25-ton unit at $200,000 of profit can kick out, what's that, 5 million a year in profit?
Right.
Right? Like, and that's with those margins. It's the revenue is actually like 6.2 million,
Yeah.
6.25 million. And
Right.
then so I say, okay, if you got 6.25 million in revenue, what would I ask? If I was in there and I was going to finalize these contracts, well, I want a deposit from customers.
Uh-huh.
And a 10% deposit on an order
Mm-hmm.
more than covers capex,
Yeah. Right.
right? A 25% deposit, if you say, and I think that it makes sense to say, look, let's pay us quarterly. And we want to be at the start of every quarter, you should be have paid for the next quarter. We've reserved space in our
Right.
building.
Exactly. Yeah.
We're going to be producing this stuff. We're not going to take the risk on making this and then you not paying.
Right.
So just stay one quarter ahead.
Right.
So that's 25%. 25% covers capex by more than 2.5 times. And then you start adding it up. Okay, well, for every 1,000 tons of orders, you might be able to get 60 plus million on your balance sheet. For 10,000 tons of orders, you're going to have your balance sheet explode to over $600 million. And you could use that money not just for capex, but for R&D. And I
Mhm.
would say, I've said, the sooner we get this company cashed up and we get a good stock price, we'll be able to attract all the top talent from around the world that are experts in graphene, all the scientists to build that Bell Labs model, which we could touch on later.
Oh,
But we're running out of time, I can see too.
okay, so
Anyway,
there's what you're saying is that there's no need to have to go out and raise a whole lot of capital. That's certainly not.
well, I think there's no need to raise any capital from
Yeah.
equity,
Hmm.
right? So let me continue.
Yeah.
So you got the capex, you can see how tiny it is, and you've got the fact that over time we're going to be able to get deposits, and we can encourage, I mean, these are some big companies that apparently she's talking with. I
Sure.
mean, let's encourage them. I mean, what kind of discount do they want on the first year's order if they give us a big deposit? I
Right.
mean, compared to the equity, like and I think, by the way, you said a 10 bagger, 100 bagger. I'm now saying I think it's a layup to $1,000 a share, right? And that's only 250 billion, which I'll get you to, because I've actually said it's going to be the fastest growing company to $1 trillion ever. And it sounds ridiculous,
Yep.
but I believe it. And I think it'll go down as one of the greatest called shots in investment history, predicting it at this stage. Because when you go through, the more due diligence I do and the more I understand what they have, the more certain I am. And so the other side of the coin now, as you mentioned, is the cost of the capex.
Hmm.
And another great plus was that it's all off the shelf.
Hmm.
So you're like,
Right.
okay, wait a
Cookie
second now.
cutter type of thing. Yeah.
You've got these chambers, right? 70-liter chambers, big carbon steel chambers that are super strong, can handle this detonation process inside to separate the carbon and the hydrogen. You've got your tubing and your valves to get the gas in and out, and the different equipment involved, and then they customize these ignitions that they have patented. The ignition systems are patented, but generally it's pretty much off the shelf equipment, right? So if I was in there working on strategy with them, and I've mentioned this to Kirsten, and as she's getting to the finish line, I'm like, why not ask all these vendors, say, look, we're going to order, we're going to build, what's the number again? Is it 15, 25 ton units next year?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what are we building the year after? We're going to build 50, 100, right? By the way, a 2-acre lot, right? A 2-acre factory, I figured out, could hold 1,000 Hyperion units, do
Wow.
25,000 tons in a little tiny 2-acre factory. That's like so small, like in terms of big factories.
Wow.
You could, and 25,000 tons is, what's that, like 5 billion of profit? Right? I joked with somebody saying it's like they might as well, it's like the Federal Reserve, the way they could print money there, on that footprint.
Yeah.
It's
That's
literally like,
incredible.
I don't know how, anyway.
So, I mean, this is your calculation here, 1,000 units on 2 acres of ground.
Yeah, I checked it with Grok, ChatGPT, and Google Gemini. I
Uh-huh.
mean, they estimated the size of the Hyperion units is like
Yep.
25 square feet. It's around 3.5 by 7 or something like that, maybe 4 by 6 something when it's a 10-cylinder unit. And then AI estimated 10 to 12 feet to allow a forklift to drive around it. And I said,
Mhm.
use 12
Okay.
feet. I said,
Yeah.
use 12 feet. Give me 1,000. I like round numbers so I can keep them in my head and play with them.
Hmm.
And I'm like, give me well, how big do we need for 1,000? And they said, well, you could put it on a 2-acre lot.
That's
So
incredible.
yeah,
That's
it's
great.
nuts. It's nuts. It's literally nuts. And so that's one of these things, that made the company, people don't even look at it because you have this bias against things that look too good to be true.
Yes.
So continuing on here, the vendors off
Yeah.
the shelf.
Yeah.
So, if I'm negotiating with a vendor, I'm going to say, look, you've done your due diligence on us. Come see the Hyperion. Whatever, we already ordered parts from you to make one. We're going to make 15. We want to make 1,000 in the next, whatever, 2 years or whatever the number is
Hmm.
that, that she's internally projecting. And I'm sure, by the way, she's being conservative because
Yeah.
that seems to be her nature.
Yeah.
So if I were to go and have those talks with a vendor, I'd be saying, look, do you want to have this big contract? I want some vendor financing. I'm going to be able to pay this thing back in 44 days. of operation pays back the capex.
Right.
Like
No, it's incredible.
it's unprecedented in not even just mining, in the history of business.
Yeah.
In the history of business, show me a business where you can invest in something and get a 44-day payback on capex. And it's because it's such a simple, bizarre process
Yeah.
that
Hmm.
no one ever would have thought of this. It's the mess around that Dr. Sorensen
Yeah,
talks
it just
about.
happened. Yep.
Well, no, but the reason why no one would do it is that you would not try, like you're not going to try to make hydrogen from acetylene. You're destroying valuable acetylene to make cheaper hydrogen.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So no one's going to spark a can of acetylene to make hydrogen because
That
that's
wasn't
what,
it. That wasn't the purpose, right? It was
yeah. But I'm just saying that's why no one's
aerosol.
ever did it.
Yeah.
Dr. Sorensen was like, I think this would be interesting. Let's mess around.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's how he discovered it.
And he told you it was quite kind of amusing about how they
Yeah.
hid behind the furnitures when they first
Yeah. Yeah.
did it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not sure what was going to happen.
It's a really cool story. But it's worth pointing out that it's one of those things that you only find if you're curious enough to mess around and
Right.
you're willing to destroy a canister full of acetylene and end up with some hydrogen, waste some heat, and then examine the soot.
Right. And
And,
it's
and,
Dr.
and even
Sorensen.
when he did it in 2006.
Yeah.
It took him till 2014 to know what he even had.
Yeah.
Despite how smart he is, he just is like, this seems like something amazing. But he didn't bother patenting it for
Number of
that
years.
long because it was hard to tell what it was. And
Uh-huh.
until you examine it, and he had someone tell him it's not even graphene at first, and then he had to look at it on the right microscope, and then he was like, "Holy F, that's graphene."
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Great story. Anyway,
Well, and
um,
and he talked about curiosity among scientists, and that's what you need. And you were going to mention the Bell Labs
yeah, yeah.
idea that he mentioned, but maybe when you're
Yeah.
ready.
Yeah. So just to finish off though, if I was dealing with a vendor, and you go, it's 3 to 6 months to build these things and a 44-day payback. So let's just call it 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
8 months and it's paid back with revenue,
Mm-hmm.
right? On the outside.
Well, that's
Right.
incredible. And you got it for 10
So
years.
so what do I say to the vendor? Hey, could you lend me? Could we do vendor financing? You could put a lien on the equipment. It's got
Yeah.
a 10-year life.
Right.
I'm only going to use it. I'm just hooking it up. I'm only going to use it for 44 days and then I'll be able to pay you.
Yeah.
So I think that the ability to negotiate, especially if somebody wants to be a good partner,
Mm-hmm.
and again, I just
Long
keep going
term.
back to I don't want to see dilution. And
Right.
if you think the shares are worth 1,000 times more, raising 5 million today is like raising 5 billion a
Right.
couple years from
Right.
now.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, no, let's not do that.
It's
There's
not
got to be a better way. So I don't care. Bridge finance, let's get a loan. Let's get a loan from, and I've already reached out even today, and I said I was going to surprise you with a couple things because even today, just as a shareholder, I wrote some emails and I messaged some of the top funds in Canada, including
Mm-hmm.
I've already had discussions where I mentioned it to Canadian Pension Plan, and I
Mm-hmm.
said, guys, and the great gentleman there got back to me right away and said, I'm going to look at this. And I said, get on this because this matters to Canada and we should be invested in it as Canadians. I mean, Canada's pension plan is, I think it's like, I did an article on it. Austin, one of my employees at Energetic Media, did an article on it just a few weeks ago by coincidence, praising it. And I think it's like 170 or 190 billion. But if
Mm-hmm.
I'm right and this company goes to just a trillion, and I think it could be one of the biggest in the world eventually, but at $1 trillion, a 10% or 20% ownership would be a massive return for the Canadian pension plan.
Yeah. I
And
don't know.
so,
I don't know if your pension plans are in trouble up there or not, but there's a lot of them
no,
up there.
they're in pretty good shape actually. They've done a
Okay.
really good job, and I've connected with a couple of them, a couple of provincial ones, and I joked with them. I said, hey, I'm sick of my taxes going up. How about you get on the stock, right? And now I also reached out to the mayor of Alberta, sorry,
Mm-hmm.
the premier of Alberta, the mayor of Edmonton. I'm trying to get into even Ontario because Ontario has a steel industry.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Sure.
it's taking a beating right now with all these tariffs and everything. I mean, the Ontario government should be stepping up, grants, loans. We should have a geek here. There should be one in Alberta.
Mm-hmm.
There's Waterloo University here.
Hmm.
Doug Ford should get on this. You
Hmm.
know, don't let the DOD and Trump run away with this company. You know, like
Hmm.
it seems like they're in talks. That's what Kirsten has said. She said that it would probably, be favorable for them. You know, like in order to get real support from the U.S., they're going to probably have to re-domicile and they're going to list on NASDAQ. And I'm like, step up, boys. Come
Yeah.
on. Like, you
Yeah.
want to support this? It's a Canadian company today. You're going to lose it and you're going to all
Yeah.
look bad.
Yeah. I
So
think she
get your
intends to bring it
pencils
down
out,
here.
get your pencils out, get your checkbooks out,
Yeah.
and give this company a check to say we want to support its growth. Let's have some Hyperion factories with our big acetylene plants in Canada. Let's have a geek at some of our top universities, and let's
Hmm.
support Canadian industries. So we're not just some low value commodity producer, but we're producing the highest quality materials in the world. And that's what we should be doing. So I'm hoping that that happens. And I'm fine to call it out, like a lot of people say, "Oh, you shouldn't do that. Go to a back channel." I'm like, screw it. We don't have time to screw around.
No, 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 no.
Boys, if you listen to this, if you watch this video, get on it. Do the due
Yeah.
diligence, okay? I'm not
Yeah.
screwing around here.
Bureaucracy is no
I'm
good.
not like my reputation's on the line, okay? I'm not bullshitting. Do the due diligence and take action and get in front of this, okay?
Mhm.
Get in front of this and let's it's too big an opportunity to miss out on.
All right.
All
So,
right.
what about the idea of the Bell Labs model that
Okay, yeah.
Dr.
Yeah.
Sorenson talked to you about? He wants to have curious, as you say, his curiosity, his experiments, and you never know what might come out of things if people are curious. But if you don't have that curiosity, then things aren't going to happen probably in
For
science.
sure. For sure. And so, just to make sure people understand too, because right now I might seem like a know-it-all, right? Talking about all this stuff. But when Dr. Sorensen said that to me, I didn't even know what the hell a Bell Labs model
Uh-huh.
was.
Uh-huh.
And a couple things he said to me, I was like, wow, okay, and I'm like, yeah, I can pretend I understand you here, and I'm making notes and I dig in, right? So I dig in and I'm like, okay, Bell Labs model. Wow, this is amazing. So the idea is to have not just, we've gone way too much into silos, right? Neuroscientists
Mhm.
doing their thing, physicists doing their thing, chemists, biology, whatever. People have gone into silos, and it's actually very detrimental because
Mhm.
we need that connective tissue. It's just like in our minds and in society. If we go into silos, we don't know how to relate to each other, and we
Right.
don't know what other people. We
Right.
can't collaborate.
Yeah, the cross fertilization of different
Yes,
disciplines. Yeah,
yeah,
very
for
important.
sure, and
And
that's a
that's the
big
idea of the
thing.
Bell Labs
Yeah, and
model.
so interestingly, I reached out again because I'd written this book. I had done research on biology, the
Hmm.
mitochondria, and in particular, a couple of people, Dr. Martin Picard and Dr. Michael Levin, two very, very I think they're both could be potential Nobel Prize winners someday, just like Dr. Sorensen. And I'm like, guys, you should look at this and let's talk because there's so much overlap. And it's kind of funny. The initial comment was, that's amazing, but I'm not a physicist. And then when I sent the same sort of message to Dr. Sorensen, he says that's really interesting stuff, but I'm not a biologist, or.
Uh-huh.
Um, and one of the things I was pointing to is Dr. Michael Levin has done some amazing experiments on showing how like newts regrow their tail,
Yeah.
and he found out that there's a frequency that they recorded the frequency at the wound point on a newt, and then they played that frequency back and stimulated a frog's that was missing a limb, right? Like they amputated a frog's leg and then stimulated it, and it grew back the limb. It wasn't a very good limb, but
Uh-huh.
it grew back the limb.
A limb.
And
Yeah.
so they're basically saying, wow, over time, we might be able to make like a band-aid or a wrap where you put this on when you have a wound and it helps you grow back your finger instead of just, they say there's a signal that says scar and a signal that says grow.
Mhm.
And so amazingly, graphene in like a band-aid type form or in graphene will make amazing sensors. So you'll be able to make these sensors in the graphene industry that could better record that signal. So it's perfect. So we know exactly what the signal and it could broadcast it. So you'll be able to maybe make a device that you could put on. Anyway, the cross pollination. That's why I say we're not
Yeah,
even going to have a clue as to where things are going.
right.
But
And the cross
ramping up that. Sorry.
and I was going to say the cross pollination with Hydrograph, given all the multiple different applications into different industries, right? And it's not like you're just trying to fix one problem in one industry.
No,
You,
it's. I look at it like it's good. Like Dr. Sorensen says, it's going to change the world, and that's why I'm so. There's a couple reasons why I'm also so excited, and people are like, "Why are you so, why are you pushing so hard?" And you got to back off, and you're creating aversion in people because you're pushing so hard, and you look like you're too promotional. And I'm like, Dr. Sorensen, I think he's about 72 years old. I think he deserves his lab. I think he
yeah,
deserves it. I think he deserves it 10 years ago. Okay.
yeah,
And I think he deserves to have this big Bell Labs model. I want to see him educate the next generation as much as possible. I think he's an American hero. I think he was a Vietnam vet. He's a patriot. He's won every award. He's going to win the Nobel Peace Prize, and he deserves it. In this market, these government officials, all these people need to quit pissing around with all this garbage that they focus on every day. I mean, there's so much waste and distraction. And let's look at what we can do together here. We can upgrade like every single thing we make and make it last longer, be more efficient. I mean, I've never seen a single discovery that could change and make the world so much better. And we need to get on it and get on it today.
well, I think that's exactly right. And it takes somebody like you that's excited about it and willing to put yourself out there, Kevin. Anything else? I think we've covered a lot of material
Oh,
here.
I got more. I got
Oh,
one more
okay.
real good one.
Let's hear it.
So it's already sort of, Eric used to always joke, Eric Sprott, he'd be like, "Oh, stand back, it's getting bigger." Because like, when this company he's invested in has great drill results, and the story just keeps getting bigger and more exciting all the time, right? Um, when I started looking at from a business strategy standpoint, the potential to get royalties from licensing patents,
Hmm.
that blows my mind. And you start imagining, well, what if they did develop, they worked with, they hired a few people and they put together a patent on how to use their particular products to make, tons of different things are coming, right?
Hmm.
You could just say like cotton or linen or whatever and enhance fibers. And then you could go to someone, or even for the mining guys, the drilling industry, drilling pipe, right? Drilling pipe for drilling, for exploration for mining
Sure.
or E&P, right? For the oil
Right.
industry. If you can make a pipe that's less friction,
Hmm.
uses less metal, can
Hmm.
withstand more heat, you can make a better pipe, a lot better of a pipe.
Hmm.
When you put this just $1 worth in a battery, a 200, like, I'm in Canada, $200 battery for your car gets a 47% greater charge time, like faster charge time, and it might last at least 50%, if not twice as long. Okay.
Oh, it's
So
incredible.
it's worth, what are they going to sell it for? A lot more than $1 more,
Yeah.
maybe $20 more, maybe $50 more. So I'm like, well, what if you offered a company an exclusive license to say, look, we'll develop a battery with you, and for the next 5 years, we're only going to work with you, and you can have this leadway to
Hmm.
ramp up in your country or whatever, right? What's that worth? What's that opportunity? So I think you'll be able to capture a piece of that margin, and that a piece of that margin of the enhanced profitability might be a multiple
No, big.
of the total cost of graphene.
Sure.
Like imagine if you could get $5 in a royalty from $1 worth of graphene.
Yeah.
Then the whole model, you just start going, wow, like again, mind blowing. What can we do with that? And can we get upfront checks today? So I'm sitting there thinking, well, who would I like to bring in to have a discussion? Do you want an exclusive licensing agreement? Apparently, I like to cook, so I asked, uh, can we make non-stick cast iron pans? And say, yeah, apparently we can. Right? And they've already got the FDA
Fascinating.
approval they're working on for Ziploc bags and Tupperwares. Well, Amazon Basics, Ziploc, whoever, right? Like, step up. Do you want an exclusive? Do you want to work on this product, or do you want to see your competitor produce it and you lose sales
Yeah.
and they dominate, right? And it's that type of leverage that you could do. And for me, it would be an exercise in working with a banker There were multiple bankers. And I'll say this right now to any bankers watching. Think about it. Bring a company, offer a deal, and you can make a fee,
Yeah.
right? Like that's how it works. These bankers are going to be basically lining up, asking to create a data room so they could bring some of their clients in that maybe are the guys that make the drilling pipe
Mm-hmm.
and say, okay, you got 30 days, boys. Somebody who's going to win this. We're auctioning off the license to make the first graphene enhanced drilling pipe.
Yeah.
You tell me what it's worth. Silent, you got 30 days. We're going to take the best bid. We already decided out of the three of you, all of you qualify, but we're only going to work. We're not going to work with three companies at the same time. We'll work with one,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
And then launch the product. So
great
what is that
lubricant. Yeah.
worth? What is
Yeah.
that worth?
Well,
You know,
it's
depending on the industry, what is it worth?
yeah.
There's a pipe maker, there's somebody who makes specialized auto parts or whatever. Like the opportunity to monetize the patents and and license the patents with royalties is mind-boggling.
Well,
And that's why I say it could become the most valuable company in the world.
well,
And it
this
should be.
is
If they execute on the plan, and maybe so I guess maybe the last thing
yeah.
you wanted to you asked me earlier about the takeover risk and all of that,
Yeah,
right?
right. Yeah,
Because that's where
I
my
mean,
mind goes when I start thinking about how big it's going to be. Because it's like, why isn't one of these big companies just trying to take it over today? And you heard Dr. Sorenson say, I don't want to get taken over,
yeah.
right? And I don't want to get taken over. And I think from talking to the people that have in Canada here and in Toronto who have done a lot of the financing, I've made a special concerted effort to try to talk to every shareholder I can to explain. Don't think that they're going to raise money and do some typical deal and a discount, and you should flip stock and try to get in later. Hold on. Uh, let's defend against the takeover. A bid might come at some point, right? Don't realize you got to know. And I keep saying you got to know what you own, and you need to
Mm-hmm.
hang on here. And we need to get proper value for this thing.
Yeah.
This company is too special. Um, it should also engage in an ethical rise where in my mind, it should try to offer to lots of companies the opportunity to make better products quicker so that
Mm-hmm.
we can make the world a better place and save all that energy and save
Mm-hmm.
on the plastics.
Mm-hmm.
So as much as on one side I'm talking about competing them, I'd rather be more, let's be open and have a good blend of licensing the patents and really just ramp up growth because there's a time value to money too. I mean, when you
Sure.
do a net present value calculation, and you
Right.
start saying, well, what if they can work with companies? Maybe they should partner with acetylene plants. Companies like Base F in Germany that I guess they call it BASF. I just call it Base F.
Mm-hmm.
You could partner with a company like them and say, look, we're going to hire and send an operator over there, like, a supervisor, but you can leverage your staff. You're going to have the factory. We're going to lease it from you. We own the Hyperion units and the material, but we're going to pay you very well to sort of operate and finance and give you a percentage of
Mm-hmm.
the profit in order to really ramp up and leverage their expertise, skill, and in-country expertise so that we can accelerate that growth. Because I look at it and say, well, yeah, it's great to say 100,000 tons, 15 years from now
Yeah.
or 10
Let's do it
years from
today.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, what if we did 100,000 tons in 4 years?
Right.
Why could we? Yes, we could.
Yeah.
It's off the shelf components. I'm pretty sure that Germany makes valves and sparkers
Mm-hmm. For sure they do.
and tanks,
Yeah.
right? And let's get all these companies innovating on the next series. And if you start looking at that and saying, well, what's 100,000? Well, 100,000 tons, you start, what is that, 20 billion of profit?
Mind-boggling.
And then you go 200,000 tons, and then you're like, oh, well, what? And that's without the licensing. So I'm like, well, what would you rather own? An AMD, right, with a 40 PE,
Yeah.
right? Would you rather own Tesla?
Yeah.
I mean, if I had to put stocks in a vault and hold them for the next 20 years, I'll take this stock over almost anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm saying on a straight up basis. I think it's like, how do you poke a hole in this thing? It's a simple, elegant, patented process. Clean, no emissions. You can't get any less energy. I just can't see how it can be beat.
Well, maybe that's a good place to leave it leave it for now, Kevin. I think your creative mind and your experience in the capital markets, your desire to learn, and you have an insatiable appetite to learn and to discover, and that is quite clear. And I think you've done your due diligence. You're not just trying to sell paper. You're not selling paper. You're selling a company and an idea and a future. I think that definitely it's going to make lives better. It's going to make products better. It's clean. It's hard, as you say. Where do you poke a hole in it? So I would encourage viewers to follow Kevin on his on X, right, and elsewhere. Any place
Yeah, I mean,
else?
I have energeticmedia.com,
Yeah, right.
YouTube,
Your
Energetic
website.
Inc.
Yep.
Yeah.
And
YouTube,
and
Energetic Inc. And maybe
and
I'll just say one more thing because I
yeah.
know a lot of my friends are watching, right? And
Hmm.
I got a lot of friends that followed me on Twitter right from when no one followed me on Twitter. I started on Twitter because I wanted people always asking me what I'm buying, what I'm doing, and I just started basically talking my book and letting people know what I'm up to. And a lot of people in my little town of Collingwood here, north of Toronto, own stock. A lot of my really good friends, and I just hope that I keep saying to them, do the due diligence. Don't just flip it when it goes up here. Like
Yeah.
you got to hang on. I hope they
Yeah.
hang on because I know a lot of my friends have got like significant shareholdings, and I want to see them get those big numbers and be able to do all the good because there's a lot of really good people I know that um, do a lot of charitable work,
That's
and we
good.
could do a lot of, like, if I make a lot of money with this, I'm going to do a lot of charity work. I'm really looking forward
For
to this.
people that
And
have needs, and
I'd rather be funding charities than trying to fundraise for them because I've tried to do that a little bit and help out with Big Brothers and a couple other ones, and it's been tough. Big Brothers Big Sisters and other organizations, and it's tough to get people to pay attention and want to donate money. And I just hope that all works out for that. My friends and family were all in that position to be able to donate.
yeah, I don't know who it was at Goldman Sachs said that when they got bailed out, they were doing God's work. Goldman Sachs back in 2008 or whatever. I have an idea that you're doing God's work more than that group at Goldman Sachs, because what can come good of this? First of all, it's not a money laundering business. It is an actual business that is going to make things better for people. And if it throws off a lot of wealth into people that were early in this process, they can use it to help their loved ones, the families, and people that are in need in one way or another. So I think it's a great story, Kevin. I'm just really thankful that you jumped on this thing. I mean, I liked it a whole lot, and you've done a lot of the due diligence for me. And if people want to watch and keep up with what you're doing on X, you're very open about sharing things. You don't hold things close to the vest. You learn something, you share it with everybody. And
Uh,
that's what makes you very valuable, I think, in many
well,
different ways to the company and to individuals that want to do their own thinking and their own investing. So,
yeah, and maybe just to add to that, part of the reason why I started talking about it is I think it's very important to get your ideas challenged. And
sure.
so when I bought a bit of shares, I started talking about it a little bit. And I was surprised that when I mentioned graphene, no one mentioned it. I said, anyone know anything about graphene? People said, oh, I got a bit of this stock that no one knew Hydrograph.
Yeah.
And then when I started finally saying, well, I've bought a little Hydrograph, nobody knew anything about it barely. A couple of guys, I get some couple of people said, yeah, I actually bought some private messaged me. What do you think? And then when I started talking about it more and more, anyone who had an objection, I could tell just by the way what they said or their questions that they did not know what they were talking about. They did not do any due diligence. They didn't understand the process or the patents. And even one PhD guy who had written a paper on graphene, that's what he did his PhD on, years ago, was very critical off the start, and then turned around and said, "Wow, like if they actually do what they say they're going to do, I'll be 1,000% their biggest supporter if this is true." And I'm like, "Well, why don't you get on the phone and talk to Dr. Sorenson and find out? And maybe you want to get a job with Hydrograph as a because it's going to
Mhm.
be it's like joining Google in the
Did
in
he
the
do it?
2000 era."
Did he do it? Did he talk to
I
Dr.
don't know. He's gone
Oh, yeah.
quiet. And I just said to him, I hope that,
Yeah.
you admit you're wrong and apologize to Dr. Sorensen and myself for basically saying it's just to promote, and it's the companies. He was saying it was worthless, right? If it's not a 2D single layer thing, it's worthless.
Okay.
And I just feel like people should, even worse than that. I was disappointed that him and people like him, often the very highly educated,
Hmm.
discourage youth
Yeah.
from even trying. They say things like, "Oh, it's too complicated. You're never going to understand this, so don't
Yeah.
even try. Just stick to
Yeah.
what you know and whatever." And that's one of the things that I think, even contrasts my book from Morgan Housel's book, which I enjoyed. It's a good overview. It's called The Psychology of Money. Mine's the biopsychology of money, and
Yeah.
it goes deeper into. It's for the people who
Human.
don't want, the people who believe they can,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
In Morgan Housel's book, he talks about not trying to predict a recession. Just sort of, you just keep saving, save more than you spend,
Hmm.
invest and compound, and over the long run you'll be fine. And I'm the opposite. I'm like, no, understand when sectors are super overvalued, get out of them and buy the cheap ones,
Yeah.
right?
Well, Kevin, you can kind of understand people that have devoted their lives and taken a PhD, and they're involved and they're writing papers and so forth. It's hard for them to admit that they're on the wrong track, and so there's always that sort of defensive. I think
It's it's it's
it's,
it's
it's
part of
human.
the it's
Yeah.
part of the biological supercomputer that is us. Is we have this thing called the brain energy conservation system that Martin Picard wrote about, where we try to save our energy. We try not to waste energy. And the brain uses 5% of the body is mass, but it uses 20% of its energy.
Uh-huh.
We don't want to do a lot of mental work if we can avoid it. So we use our pattern recognition system
Hmm.
to eliminate work.
I see.
And
Yeah.
and so Hydrograph, right? It set off pattern recognition avoidance signals to many, many people. Small little company, microcap, CSE, graphene sector losses, the bias that this person had about I'm thinking he understood graphene, and there's a new development prevented him from even going and looking. You go on and on. There's also like recency bias. When
Yeah.
you do a lot of work and you think you're an expert in something, you assume you are, and you
Yeah.
you think you don't need to go do the work
Yeah.
and look.
It's
You could
it's
just
very
write it off quickly.
right. It's very challenging to think that you've lost everything you've put so much into. So I guess we're going to have to leave it go at that, Kevin. Thank you so much for your time and
Hey,
your
you're welcome. It's a
energy.
great pleasure, and thanks for letting me ramble on so
Oh,
much.
I mean, it's great. And I think that people will have learned a lot now, and they'll learn a lot more if they follow you on X and go to your website. So thank you very much. We'll look to keep up with you in the future too, if that's possible.
Yeah,
So thank
great
you.
pleasure. It's really great getting to know you over the last couple weeks.
Very good. Likewise. All right, folks. Well, that's it for this week. I'm not sure who is going to be on with us next week. It's probably going to be a mining company one of these times. I've been so involved with Hydrograph, I haven't been able to get to the normal mining company stories, but there will be one coming up soon, I'm sure. Keep an eye on your inbox to find out who the next guest will be. Until then, goodbye and God's blessings to you.